People who are 1 in a million, part 2. This is Gary Turner, but he's better known as the Elastic Man. He has a medical condition that causes his skin to be so stretchy that he can stretch the skin from his neck over his mouth. Next is Nanya Su, who's a boy with perfect night vision. His parents both have brown eyes, but he has blue eyes that glow when a light is shined. He claims that it's hard to see during the day, but while everyone sees this at night, this is what he sees. This is Paul Carrison, the real-life Papa Smurf. To fix his skin condition, he would drink silver and rub it on his skin every day, causing him to turn irreversibly blue. Finally, this man came into the hospital with severe chest pain, and doctors were shocked when they discovered he had 2 hearts, and he had suffered a double heart attack.
She was unalived on the street and everything was recorded. On August 30th, 28-year-old Daniela Estefania Lopez was walking on one of the streets in Colombia. A video captured by a security camera shows a motorcyclist parked to the side, and he waits until Daniela walks in front of him. Immediately and without a word, he shoots Daniela from behind and leaves her lying on the ground. That man then immediately fled on his motorcycle. Daniela tried to be helped, but unfortunately, from her serious injuries, she passed away. For more than 2 years, Daniela worked at a bakery, and they are unsure if this is the result of something happening at that bakery or if this was completely random. The police are currently investigating this crime, and this has caused complete shock in the area. This man who was captured on security cameras still has not been captured. This is worrying a lot of people in the area since they are afraid that there's going to be more violent acts towards women. In another attack, a woman was working at a small little store. A man got off of his motorcycle and shot her multiple times. That woman is still alive, but she is in a care center fighting for her life.
This truck driver took the life of 5 people because he was distracted on TikTok. On the morning of January 12, 2023, 36-year-old Danny Tyner was driving on Interstate 10 in Arizona when he drove his tractor trailer into stopped traffic. This scene is so difficult to look at, but basically his truck sandwiched 2 other cars with another big truck at the front. These are the 5 victims that lost their lives on that day, and when Danny was asked what happened, he said that he looked down for a couple of seconds because he got a notification on his work tablet, and when he looked back up, there was not enough time to brake. But that wasn't true. When his phone was analyzed, it showed that he was actively using TikTok when the crash happened. Now, what I found disturbing was that during his interaction with police, he didn't seem too fazed. He was eventually charged with manslaughter and was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison for each count of negligent homicide, which totaled to 22.5 years.
This is the tragic story of the Boy Scout who made his entire neighborhood radioactive. Nicknamed the Nuclear Boy Scout, David Hahn was a teenager from Michigan who was obsessed with nuclear radiation. When he was only 15, David attempted to build a nuclear reactor in his backyard shed, using radioactive material from household items including vintage clocks, smoke detectors, and gun sights. Within 2 years, David had built a functioning reactor which gave off enough radiation to be detected throughout his entire neighborhood. David was soon caught by police when they found hazardous materials in his car during a routine stop and thought he was building an atomic bomb. When David's shed was raided by the EPA, they determined that his project had created dangerous levels of radiation, leading them to dismantle the building and classify it as hazardous waste. This mugshot from 2006 shows David covered in sores as a result of his extensive exposure to radiation. This, combined with continuous legal and mental health issues, led to David's early passing at the age of 39 from an accidental overdose.
Genetics that give you superpowers, Part 2. The super coffee drinker, BDNF. Carriers of this gene remain completely unaffected to the effects of caffeine from coffee, and can often easily get a night's sleep after drinking a cup. The perfect memory gene, HSAM. If you are lucky enough to be born with this gene, you will have almost a perfect memory. However, it's extremely rare with only 25 confirmed cases. The super sprinter gene, ACTN3. People with these genes are able to run extra fast, as these genetics give your muscles a higher flexing rate which gives them more explosive power. The alcohol immunity gene, ALDH2. Having this super rare gene will mean you will never be able to experience being drunk with your friends, and you might have a lot of explaining to do, as it gives you total immunity from the effects of being drunk.
This is how rare your body is compared to the rest of the world. Only 10% of people have something called Darwin's tubercle. It's this little bump on the outside of your ear. And it's said that people who have this are better at sensing voice tonality. 10% of people also have what's called Morton's toe. This is where your big toe is shorter than the toe next to it. Only 26% of people have a narrator inside their head. Most people don't hear a voice when they think. What's even more rare is only 5% of people have their tongues tied to their mouth. I thought everyone had this. Everyone flares their nostrils subconsciously, but only 30% of people can do it on command. Less than 1% of people have unbreakable bones, making you basically superhuman. Only about 35% of people can gleek, and only 1% can do it on command. And gleeking is when you squirt saliva from underneath your tongue.
This incident has made people on the internet so upset because this woman went up to a teen and pulled down her skirt because she thought it was too short. Even if you think this skirt is too short, I think we can all agree that you cannot go up to a child and touch them. The teen said that this woman approached her from behind and basically put her hand in her area. This woman, who's a 49-year-old Ida Lorenzo, said to the girl and her friends, "I happen to work for the state, and if I have to see your cheeks hanging out again, I will call CPS."
I happen to work for the state, and if I have to watch your cheeks hanging out again, I will call CPS.
Now, let's be real for a second. If this was a man who did this to a young girl, police would be called immediately and there would be no excuses. They were waiting at a restaurant to be seated and she basically felt like it was inappropriate for this young girl to be dressed like this in front of everyone. Which, if you feel that way, then you can leave. You should never be putting your hands on anyone. She was eventually charged with sexual battery, which I'm glad, because you can't be putting your hands on anyone, especially kids.
People who are 1 in a million. This girl's name is Zhang Rufang and she is over 100 years old. But a few years ago, something strange happened. She started growing a horn on her head. At first, it started off small, but now it's grown up to 6 centimeters in length. But the craziest part is she's actually starting to grow a second horn on the other side. And doctors have offered to remove it from her head, but she refuses. Before I show you the craziest one, I just found a way you can find your celebrity lookalike, and apparently I look like Mr. Beast. If you want to know who your celebrity lookalike is, just press this link in the comments. Next up is Nong Yosoi, and he has perfect night vision. And the strange part about this is both his parents have brown eyes, but he has blue eyes. When everyone else sees darkness, he sees perfectly in the middle of the night.
The rarest things found on Earth. This is a red diamond and it is one of the rarest material known to man. Because of that, they are way more expensive than normal diamonds. This tiny one is worth around $25 million. And this is a corpse flower. It's basically a giant flower that smells like rotting flesh and it can only be found in remote areas in Indonesia. Imagine having one of these in your garden. And this small and beautiful sea creature is a blue dragon. It's only a few inches big, but it eats deadly jellyfish every day for food.
A Russian scientist injected himself with this ancient bacteria to see what would happen. Dr. Anatoly Brushkov discovered bacteria deep within the permafrost of Siberia that was 3.5 million years old, and somehow it was still alive. It was named Bacillus F, and after doing some experiments on it, he realized the bacteria not only seemed to be immune to aging, but also appeared to have a life-extending effect on almost every organism it touched. He tested the strain on female mice who were able to continue reproducing into old age, much older than the average mice could, and when he exposed it to crops, they grew faster and were more frost resistant. The town of Yakut, Siberia, close to where this bacteria was found, also happens to be one of the coldest human settlements on Earth, with their population reporting longer lifespans than average humans, perhaps due to Bacillus F leaking into their water supply. Dr. Brushkov was so convinced he said "F it" and injected himself with the ancient bacterium to test it out firsthand. 2 years later, he reported dramatic improvements to his general health, claiming to need less sleep, working longer hours, and just having more energy in his day-to-day life. He also allegedly hasn't gotten sick since he injected himself with it, with him and his colleagues starting to call it the elixir of life. Dr. Brushkov did this in 2013 and claims to be in the best health of his life today. And I'm sure Big Pharma loves the idea of a miracle life potion that would potentially lose them billions of dollars a year in revenue, so we definitely should not question any articles that debunk this find. To be fair, these effects aren't exactly 100% confirmed and could very well be a placebo effect, but that sure didn't stop others from hopping on the Bacillus F bandwagon. German actor actress Manouche began self-medicating the bacteria and reported being able to go for longer runs, feeling less cold in the winter, and her skin just feeling softer and younger. Brushkov and his team insist the effects of Bacillus F are clear and significant, although they admit they're not yet sure why it has the effect it does. But if they can manage to isolate the gene responsible for the positive benefits of the bacteria, they may have just discovered the ultimate elixir of life. As long as there isn't, you know, a whole ass industry with infinite money that tries to stop it.
Weirdest Kids Toys Ever, Part 51. Mr. Bucket, released in 1990, discontinued twice, and brought back. But what was the problem? Well, the shape of the mouth didn't help. But the only thing they actually changed were the words in the jingle. A certain part they decided to cut out.
I'm Mr. Bucket. I'm Mr. Bucket. Toss your balls in my top. I'm Mr. Bucket. Out of my mouth I will pop. I'm Mr.
She arranged her own essay by a man she met in a chat room. This is 35-year-old Sharon Lopatka. She was from Maryland, she was married, and she enjoyed BDSM. She was always in chat rooms, and she would always post about how she wanted someone to SA her and take her life. In those chat rooms, she ended up talking to Robert Frederick Glass of North Carolina, and the two just hit it off. Robert told Sharon he would fulfill her fantasies, and they exchanged over 900 emails. She explained to Robert that she wanted him to torture her while they were intimate and then to take her life. On October 13th, Sharon told her husband that she was planning to visit family and friends in Georgia. She left a note for her husband that she wasn't going to be returning and to not track her down. She then got into her car to make the 4-hour journey to meet Robert. She drove halfway to North Carolina and then took an Amtrak to where Robert was. He picked her up and then drove her to his mobile home. The pair spent 3 days together before Sharon's death. No one really knows what happened during those 3 days. Sharon's husband ended up finding the note and notifying police, and that's when they discovered the emails between Sharon and Robert on her computer. Police were watching Robert's house for a couple of days, hoping to see Sharon alive, but they never saw her exit the home, so they issued a warrant for his arrest. They took him into custody and charged him with manslaughter. While police were searching Robert's home, they found Sharon's decomposing body in a shallow grave in his backyard. Robert initially claimed that it was all an accident, but the emails told a different story. Robert pled guilty to manslaughter, and he was only sentenced to 4 years in prison. 2 years into Robert's sentence, he ended up suffering from a fatal heart attack. He was actually scheduled to be released from prison in just a few weeks.
Extinct animals scientists are close to reviving. Firstly, the woolly mammoth. It was believed to have gone extinct 25,000 years ago, but scientists discovered hundreds that just died recently. So they're planning to put its DNA inside African elephants, and they expect to bring them back in the next 5 years. Next, dodo birds were hunted to extinction 400 years ago, but a preserved head was recently discovered. By mixing that DNA with a maned pigeon, dodo birds should be coming back in 15 years. Finally, expect to see saber-toothed tigers outside soon, because scientists discovered DNA preserved in tar pits, and they plan to combine it with African lions. So this 10-inch tooth beast should be coming back in 10 years.
Never slice tomatoes this way. So when this guy noticed that his boss was slicing tomatoes one by one, wasting a lot of time, he decided to show him a trick that everyone should know. He took a plate, put a few tomatoes on it, covered them with another plate, and in one move, he sliced more tomatoes than his boss in an hour.
This pedophile artist still has an incredibly successful career after he was convicted. Meet Nobuhiro Watsuki. So Nobuhiro is from Japan. He was born in Tokyo, and he started drawing from a very early age. Eventually, Nobuhiro began publishing his manga. He started winning awards and began making a name for himself in anime. Now, a lot of people will recognize this guy's art, his works, but his most popular work has to be Rurouni Kenshin. I totally said that wrong, I'm sure. For decades, Nobuhiro was one of the biggest manga artists and authors in all of Japan. Like I said, receiving a lot of awards. But in 2017, Japanese police raided Nobuhiro's office. And inside of his office, they found 100 DVDs. Each one of these DVDs contained CP or CSAM. And all of these videos and photos featured children in their early teens. I mean, absolutely disgusting stuff. But what did the authorities in Japan do after finding this? Was he given a long prison sentence? 100 DVDs is a lot. Nope, he was fined about $1,500. That's right, he served 0 time in jail or prison and had to pay $1,500. And then shortly afterwards, his serialization of his manga continued, basically as if nothing had ever happened. Now, I'm not really a manga anime guy, but I'm sure that a lot of people on here are, and will definitely recognize this work. And I'm sure that a lot of the people that read this stuff don't know the history of the author. And in my mind, somebody who's convicted of a crime like this should never be supported in any sort of way. Financially, artistically, it doesn't matter. This is the type of guy that should be cut off from society. But he was pretty unrepentant, obviously, a $1,500 fine. I would definitely myself encourage Japanese authorities to go check this guy's hard drives nowadays. But as for now, he's pretty much untouched.
Have you ever seen a Mickey Mouse gas mask? These were made to calm terrified children. About a month after Pearl Harbor, Walt Disney was in Washington, D.C. to design and discuss Mickey Mouse gas masks for children. 1,000 of these were produced and given away to key members of Congress to help support the project. At the time, President Roosevelt even received one. Walt Disney also came up with drawing designs for Pluto and Three Little Pigs gas masks, although these ones never reached production. They attempted to keep the fun element in something as grim as gas raids. During these raids, children would be persuaded to regard the whole thing as a game.
And curtain number 1 is correct. Wait. You don't remember what she looks like?
Here are the craziest things to ever happen at Walmart. So one day, an 18-year-old was craving milk. So he decided to steal not 1, not 2, but 26 gallons of milk from Walmart. Oh, and he did this dressed as a cow. And if that doesn't sound weird enough to you, you'd be surprised to learn that even though he made himself stand out in the cow costume, he managed to not get caught on the spot. Next, on Black Friday in 2013, a customer and his son were freaking out in Walmart because they thought that his ex-wife was possessed by a demon. And so they locked her in their car and set up an exorcism in the parking lot by throwing sacred oil at her, which might have been the reason why they ended up divorcing. Also, back in 2013, a 16-year-old was going into labor, and she gave birth in a Cannon City Walmart bathroom. Now, there was panic for a moment because the baby wasn't breathing, but luckily, one of the store's employees were CPR certified and they revived the baby. I guess Walmart really can help you live better. And finally, in 2011, at a Walmart in South Carolina, customers witnessed a man named Avery Blandon end the life of his wife, Lilia Blandon, while she was working inside the store's bank. Avery stabbed her multiple times, and she sadly passed away on the way to the hospital. He then tried to escape the scene, but he crashed his SUV and was caught by police. But what's weird is that the store stayed open during the investigation. Only in Walmart.
Did you guys see this video of these two planes that almost crashed into each other in midair? It was all caught by this police officer's dash cam. This all happened last month in Syracuse, New York, when a Delta airplane was cleared to take off, while at the same time an American airline airplane was cleared to land in the same runway. So the Delta airplane was on its way to LaGuardia Airport, while the American airline plane was arriving from Washington Reagan Airport. What's crazy is that these two planes were only 725 feet away from each other in the air, but from the ground's point of view, they looked so much closer. At one point, the two planes were side by side, and that should not be happening for obvious reasons, which is why the job of an air traffic controller is so important. And this error was completely on the air traffic controller, who shouldn't have cleared both airplanes at the same time. It's still unclear why and how this happened, but they're still investigating. Thankfully, both planes did not collide, and all 159 passengers are safe.
It's official, aliens exist. These are the remains of non-human creatures. They were presented to a hearing in Mexico's Congress, which is investigating unidentified anomalous phenomena. The hearing was told that the specimens were found in Peru in 2017 and apparently are 700 and 1800 years old. People online were quick to compare the likeness to that of E.T. from the movie. One user wrote, "No way, they can't be that small. small. Those are mutated cats. But looking at a picture that was released of their skull, this is no cat, which is eerily similar to a skull they found in 2021. What's worse is experts testified under oath that one of them is seen to have eggs inside it, and both specimens were said to have implants made of very rare metals. And even though the aliens are pretty small, you can tell that this is clearly something different. I ain't gonna lie, this guy looks like he doesn't want to go to work tomorrow. Let's take one last look. Do you believe in aliens?
Morbid Facts, Part 402. George Lopez has a genetic condition that caused his kidneys to slowly deteriorate. So when he needed a new kidney in 2005, his wife Ann gave him one of her own. A couple years later, George reportedly cheated on his wife, then divorced her in 2010, all while wearing her kidney. The first scientist to observe penguins engaging in gay intercourse, grape, and necrophilia was so disturbed that he tried to obscure his findings to prevent people from knowing the truth about penguins. In 1995, a substitute school bus driver in Illinois stopped at a red light with the back part of the bus still on some train tracks. The children were screaming for her to move the bus forward as a train approached, but she was confused about what they meant. The train struck the bus at 60 miles per hour and 7 children were killed. In 2018, Gloria Williams pleaded guilty to posing as a nurse to abduct Kamaya Mobley from her mother's arms in the maternity ward. She was sentenced to 18 years in prison, the same length of time Kamaya was separated from her birth family.
These brothers attacked their stepfather after finding out he was touching their younger sister. In January 2022, Christian and Alejandro Trevino found out that their stepfather, Gabriel Quintanilla, was essaying their 9-year-old sister. When these brothers found out, they were enraged and confronted Gabriel at the residence. A physical fight started between the three, and Gabriel ended up leaving on foot. The Trevino brothers and a family friend, Juan Melendez, left the area. They got into a truck and started passing by a local apartment complex when they saw Gabriel walking by himself. Gabriel was attacked by Alejandro, Christian, and Juan before being thrown in the back of the bed of the truck and being left in a field. Gabriel was discovered by a farmer, and they believe that he might have been alive when the teens dumped his body. When Gabriel was found, it was revealed that he was suffering from severe blunt force trauma to his head. During this time, Gabriel had a warrant out for his arrest for essaying another child. The Trevino brothers were charged and held on $150,000 bonds, and Juan, the family friend, was released on August 10, 2022. Alejandro, Christian, and Juan have pled not guilty.
In 2011, 4-year-old Gabby Mann was living in Seattle, Washington with her family. One day, she dropped a chicken nugget onto the ground, and before she could pick it up, a neighborhood crow swooped down and took the free lunch. And because Gabby was a messy eater, she continued to drop food everywhere she went, and so she continued to inadvertently feed these crows. She grew to really enjoy the attention, and so she started feeding them huge portions of her lunch. When Gabby's mother discovered where most of her daughter's food was going, she wasn't upset, she was just worried her daughter wasn't getting enough to eat. They would go out and buy some food just for the crows. She and her mom began feeding the crows every day. Gabby went outside one morning to refill the peanut tray when she noticed there was a small earring. Over the following few weeks, when more and more little trinkets started showing up, Gabby's mom installed a camera. She was amazed to see the crows would come in and they would eat their food, and then they would leave behind these shiny little trinkets. But the crows' most astonishing gift came the following year. Gabby's mother was an avid photographer, and one day she was out by herself photographing a bald eagle. She managed to drop a lens cover to one of her cameras. That night, when she got back to her house, she couldn't believe what was sitting there. She ran back inside and pulled up the footage from the bird camera, and there it was, a crow coming into the yard with the lens cap in its mouth. This behavior is very significant because it means the relationship between the crows and Gabby and her mom was not a transactional one. Today, Gabby and her mother still feed the crows every single day, and the crows still love Gabby and her mother.
Okay, this
this is a weird one. A pharmaceutical company that's trialing a new groundbreaking age reversal pill had such good results that the local news wanted to run a story on them. But before they even could publish the video, the chairman and CEO died. You see, 6 months ago, this 12-year-old German Shepherd was near death. He had terminal cancer, was operated on, and his prognosis wasn't looking good. The dog's caretaker knew that an age reversal trial was being conducted on dogs, and so she asked if Zeus could be a part of it due to his dire situation. The pill's aim is to lengthen telomere caps on human stem cells, because as part of the aging process, our telomeres shorten, which increases the chance of age-related diseases and, of course, death.
If you can increase telomeres, you can reproduce stem cells and keep repairing things so that you can get literally younger.
They said that in their drugs, preclinical data from a previous in vitro human cell study, it showed that the medication lengthened telomeres by almost 200%. Zeus was granted access to the medication in April, and his caretaker said that she saw results almost immediately.
He's doing marvelously. He goes out to our pool and he swims and he has fun and he plays with the tennis ball.
A recent scan showed that the cancer in his body had completely disappeared, and the results were so remarkable that she asked for more to give another 12-year-old dog that could hardly walk due to arthritis. And just last week, she said that he has started galloping and running again. But then, despite all of that, they hit us with this.
And we are sad to report that since this interview was conducted, Dr. Christopher Chapman has recently passed away.
On the company's website, they announced his passing, saying, out of respect and privacy for Dr. Chapman's family, details of the 71-year-old's passing will not be made available. And then added that to support the new chairman and CEO, 3 telomere directors have voluntarily resigned. Human trials for this drug are planned for mid-2025.
The rarest things in the world. Rarest animal, vaquita, only 10 left in the wild. Rarest gem on earth, painite, worth $60,000 per carat. Rarest poker hand, the royal flush, 1 in 655,000 chance. Rarest element on earth, asstatine, less than 1 gram on earth exists. Rarest car, Ferrari 250 Gran Turismo.
Okay, this is getting hard to believe, but there has just been reports of a second wave of explosions in Lebanon, but this time it's people's walkie-talkies. So yesterday, Hezbollah fighters' pagers, today, their radios. Initial reports are saying that the most recent wave of explosions have caused cars and houses to be set on fire, and there were even reports, this one's crazy, that one exploded at a funeral of someone who died from yesterday's explosions. And while I'm on the topic of explosions, you're going to see a lot of reports of people saying explosive devices found at Trump rally, even going as far as saying third assassination attempt, ? Let me just save you some time. That is a false report. There's going to be a lot of corrections. Don't worry about it. I'll keep you updated.
Imagine being kidnapped, locked in a basement, and then when the police come, they just leave you there to die. Back in the 1980s, many girls in Belgium were just randomly vanishing without a trace. This guy right here, Mark Detroit, was the guy who was doing all of this. Now, in his early years, he had a lot of relationship issues and ended up marrying his second wife, Michelle Martin, this woman right here. And what these two would do together genuinely will make you feel sick. Major trigger warning, if you're easily scared, please just keep on scrolling right now. This is your final warning. On June the 7th, 1985, they took their first victim, who was an 11-year-old girl walking home from school, which they kidnapped. They took her back to their place, R'd her, and then took a photo of her after this before just releasing her. Now, they did this tons of times before actually being caught by the police the first time, but then it got far worse. So they were both arrested but got a very, very short sentence and were out in no time. Mark was released in 1992 after serving literally 3 years in prison for all of this. Of course, the reason they were caught the first time was because the victims they let go free had reported them, so they built this literal dungeon in the basement of the house where they would keep people. He went on to kidnap at least 6 people in the space of a couple years and left them all in here. At this time, the news was going crazy in the local area because tons of girls were going missing, no one knew where they were, but they were all in here. Now, even crazier again, Mark's own mother actually reported him to the police and they still didn't go round. And she even told the police that he literally had girls captive in the basement right now and the police did nothing. Not long after this, though, Mark was actually arrested for something completely separate, stealing a car. And he told his wife she would have to keep the girls in the basement alive by watering them and feeding them. Yeah. Now, by far, the most angering part of this whole story is that the police finally went round and did a check on the house. They literally heard children screaming and begging for help, and they walked out. They did nothing. Because apparently it sounded like the screams were coming from outside and just kids playing a prank or something. Like, what? There was even undeveloped camera film on the side here, which they just didn't develop, but if they did, they would have seen literally everything. Now apparently, this woman was too scared to go into the basement and look after the girls, so tragically passed away. When he finally got out, he started again, and more girls started vanishing, until eventually someone came forward after spotting him in a van, basically while in the act. He then confessed, showed the police the whole basement and everything, and even showed them where some bodies of people were. He also reportedly had another accomplice that they had a disagreement, and he unalived him and buried him in the house as well. After the whole case came to a close, she got 30 years in jail and he got a life sentence.